If your blood work is normal, you're healthy.
Not at all. Sedentary lifestyle is worse than smoking. If you are sleeping for 4 hours and still hitting the gym and you're like, people are very boastful about it.
Hustle culture.
So you only realize that the kind of harm that you've done once your body starts showing signs of aging. Anything to do with sugar is a carbohydrate metabolism disorder.
Is it always confirmed that if your parents have diabetes, you will also have diabetes?
A bad lifestyle and bad food choices, nothing in this world can fix. The single cause for aging is inflammation. The 10,000 steps that have been glorified, they've been glorified just because that is the minimum amount of movement every living human being should indulge in.
Magic pill now, which is GLP-1 or Ozempic, it's booming in India right now because a lot of people are losing weight. Hello and welcome to the Gut Feel Show, Dr. Manisha. How are you doing?
Thank you, Pranav. I'm doing great.
Let's talk about your subject, functional medicine, functional nutrition. Please break it down for us. What is it?
So, functional nutrition is everything which your conventional medicine is not. So, functional nutrition can actually help you understand your symptoms to a disease before the disease actually happens to you.
Okay. And how does it do that? Can you give some examples?
So, for example, if when you are building towards, let's say, a full-fledged diabetes or an insulin resistance, your body will show you symptoms many years in advance. Maybe you'll probably have unexplained fatigue. Your sleep could be disturbed. You may be you may always find it very difficult to lose weight. Your fat distribution in the body could be indicative of insulin resistance much before the insulin resistance will show in the blood report. So for example, people those who have insulin resistance, which builds towards diabetes ultimately, will actually, one, they'll find it very difficult to lose weight. They will find themselves more lethargic than anybody else. And the third, they will mostly gain abdominal weight. And in spite of trying their best to lose weight, abdominally, they'll not be able to drop weight.
So in such a condition, what do you suggest? Like, for example, there's a patient of similar situation in front of you. In functional medicine, reports, for example, are not saying type 2 diabetes so far. What does this person do next?
So functional nutrition interprets the report very differently from what a conventional doctor would do, because we do not look at just the reference range. For example, your B12 levels could be 300. And, for a conventional doctor, that would just be an okay thing because it is within the range. But we know that functionally you have to be at least 600 for all your metabolic functions to be okay. So the interpretation of the report is completely different, and we can actually build towards optimizing. So functional nutrition is more about optimizing and not about curing. So once you optimize, you understand that you are working towards preventing something big coming your way.
Can you help me understand with some last case that you saw in the similar situation? What happened with the patient? How did you work? Can you give me some real life example?
Alright, so there was one typical case that I would like to discuss here. So this was this typical 40-year-old guy who comes to me. He's he's thin, lanky, works out regularly, an A-lister in a large corporate, stress levels very high, sleeping schedules are erratic, no respect for circadian rhythm. There are calls that happen, US time calls happen. And he says that, well, look at my blood reports, everything looks okay, but my energy is really taken a severe hit, because when I'm on these calls, I think I just blank out. There's brain fog. There's something I feel very low on energy when I go to the gym. I just push myself to work out, but I'm not able to work out the way I would maybe 2 years ago. So when we looked at the reports, we figured out that while everything largely looks within range, he was already building towards insulin resistance in spite of being very thin. So it should not be. This is also another thing that
that's
you
very
should not
interesting.
confuse it with. And when we just dug deep into the whole the profile, the genetic profile, we realized that both his parents are diabetic. And when you come from a family of diabetics, you have to understand that you have a kind of a predisposition. Your body is actually metabolizing carbohydrates, stress, and everything else in a very different way to somebody where there's where the person has no history of diabetes. So we figured out that, like, there's some things that need to be fixed, and largely stress levels have to be managed, the food needs correction, and the lifestyle needs to be respected. So this is what we did. We just told him to focus on probably, like, just following a circadian rhythm. And circadian rhythm means that you start your day with the dawn, and you probably, like, you just start winding down
Stick to
when you
sleeping
know.
and waking up time.
Yes. So the sleeping time needs to be respected, because that is what actually has a big role to play. Because if you're not sleeping on time, you're not giving your body a chance to recover and heal. Most of the magic that happens, when it comes to recovery, happens between 10 to 12, right? So 12 midnight, 10 p.m. to 12 midnight. So if you're not sleeping in those hours, you are missing, your body is missing the chance to recover and heal, right? And when you just, like, these small changes when you make, they start totaling up into bigger results. And we've seen that in our practice, like, with lifestyle changes, with, like, food changes, prioritizing protein, following meal sequencing, that you start with fiber, then protein, and then then carbohydrates, and so on and so forth, can actually help you figure out a lot of things without you reaching that stage where you have to be on diabetic medications and statins, and so on and so forth.
So this person started to recover.
100%. His reports changed, and the good part was that he just followed the advice very seriously. He became very disciplined around his food, his, like, his sleeping on time, managing stress levels, and 3 months down the line, we saw that everything changed for him. His symptoms completely went away, and to the point that he came back and he said that, was my report okay at that point in time? Do you think that there could be an error? Because the next time when we tested, the reports were different, the symptoms were different. But then, like I say, that you don't treat reports, you treat symptoms. So symptomatically, he saw a huge improvement, and the blood work definitely also improved.
So like you mentioned, this person was in 40s. So are these also a combined reason of the poor male health right now in 40s? A lot of heart attacks, silent heart attacks are happening.
100%. I think stress is the primary driver, and no respect for sleep. These days it is completely glorified. If you are sleeping for 4 hours and still hitting the gym, and you're like, people are very boastful about it.
Hustle culture.
Yeah, the hustle culture. They say, oh, who's sleeping for 8 hours? I can sleep for 4 hours and then hit the gym and probably, like, run 10 kilometers on Sunday. And I'm not sleeping as much. There's so much to do in life. So you only realize that, the kind of harm that you've done once your body starts showing signs of aging, which typically sets in like, in early 40s. So, of course, this is the primary driver, because, people are just overstimulated, overstressed, and, they're not respecting what is relevant, which is, like, your basics of a basic, good, clean lifestyle and stress management.
So males, is it like, because a lot of males are facing a lot of problem in 40s primarily, it is being discussed a lot now, because we are seeing a lot of heart attacks. So do you think because males, first of all, emotional health, they are unable to process, and now work hustle culture has got them to sitting, most of sedentary
Lifestyle is the primary driver. So they say that sedentary lifestyle is worse than smoking.
Oh, is it?
Yes. So if you just stay sedentary and you do not work out, and so the 10,000 steps that have been glorified, they've been glorified just because that is the minimum amount of movement every living human being should indulge in. So this is not something that, 10,000 steps is a magic number. It's just that is the basic requirement. Whatever you do above that is entirely your call. But that is the basic minimum that everybody, all of us should do.
Understood. One more thing I need to understand from you. You said this person had a history of diabetes. Can you break down diabetes a bit to me? Like, what type of diabetes was that? And is it always confirmed that if your parents have diabetes, you will also have diabetes?
It is not a confirmation, but see, we are as a human being, we are a combination of course, our genetic make. The genetic pool that we come from has a very large role to play as to how our body will respond to, to stress, to food, to everything else. Having said that, we also learn our food habits early on from our family. So, for example, if a family has, and mostly Indian families, if you see, we are typically carb dominant, food habits we have mostly carb dominant food habits. And so anybody who's like, where protein has not been prioritized, they've never been a part of your active food culture of the family, you will see that insulin resistance, things like PCOD.
Protein is linked to all that?
100%. So protein, and so you have to understand that anything to do with sugar is a carbohydrate metabolism disorder. So
While only all the gym rats are only talking about protein.
protein is something which is integral to to all of us, 100% of us,
And
because
especially, I think India being a vegetarian dominated society, we further have more problems consuming protein because we don't have so many sources.
100%. So vegetarians, while the choices are limited, but I mean, nowhere am I trying to say that non-vegetarian diet is a superior diet, because that may have its own perils. So balance is important, and definitely protein is also important. So you have to fit in protein into your diet in a very balanced way. And while protein is also important, and protein has been glorified and largely industry driven, because there are as many protein shakes and protein powders as probably you'll see as many as you can probably imagine. But fiber is also equally important. Protein, if you just have in isolation, if you think that I'm having three protein shakes in a day and this is probably I'm able to have 75 grams of protein, that's completely incorrect. That's a misnomer, because that protein is not bioavailable. You're not able to metabolize that protein. So that will in fact lead to a lot of gut issues.
So what do you need with that? And when
A
you
lot
say
of-
balanced protein, what do you mean by balanced?
Finally, the food has to come in real form, which is which is cooked food.
So give me some examples of cooked food, because vegetarians love to know that. Because give me some 4-5 examples that you suggest for vegetarians.
So vegetarians, of course, the bigger struggle is that dals are not so protein dense, and they do not even have a complete amino acid profile. Having said that, what we can actually do is you have to be a little smarter around including protein when you're a vegetarian. So one thing is, definitely you can just you can sprout your dals. So you can sprout in fact all your dals and cook them the way you cook regular dals. You can definitely improve your protein content by just doing this one simple thing. The other thing is the sprouts, the moong dal sprouts, which are the most common sprouts that we see in the market, and probably most of us we consume as families. You can also dry it, powder it, store it, and use it while kneading flour, in your other vegetable preparations. And that is the easiest way to kind of have a good protein consumption. Also, dairy is important. Curd is very good. It's a very good source of protein. You can in fact include curd at least 2 times a day. That is also, that's important. You can include a very gentle, easy to digest protein shake, a protein powder in your diet. There are lots of good examples of vegan protein and yeast protein which are there in the market, gentle on the stomach. But like I said, that just chugging down three protein shakes thinking that now I have had 75 gram protein is completely incorrect, because that protein your body will never be able to metabolize. If you are if you're just working out of the gym and you're probably into heavy strength training and all, then maybe at that point in time it may, but there is no guarantee of the protein shake being absorbed and translating into the right kind of impact.
So it's not the numbers. It's more about what all are you taking along.
Bioavailable.
Bioavailable.
So protein has to be in available form.
It doesn't matter 120 gram or 100 gram.
Yes. So for 120 grams, you might just think that, well,
Because a
I've
lot
hit
of
the
gym
number.
people keep on calculating.
Yeah, so they say I've hit the number. So a lot of gym people, maybe they're able to metabolize if they're into heavy strength training. But if you're just mildly running on the treadmill for 30 minutes and then you think that, well, let me have 75 grams of protein because I'm a 75 kg guy. So you are making a mistake there.
So if you don't work out.
Very interestingly, if you do not have enough carbs and you just keep loading protein in the body, the protein starts mimicking carbohydrates.
Is it?
Yes.
So it
you're
further damages, it backfires.
100%. And in fact, you will start gaining weight. You'll probably wonder that, well, itna protein kha raha hu, tab bhi weight बढ़ रहा है. That is because you are not, your meals are not balanced.
You're not understanding protein.
100%. So the idea over here is that your meals have to be balanced. Carbohydrate, where we have to cut it, where we have to cut down and where we have to add is where, your science comes into the picture.
And strength training is directly linked to protein consumption and absorption.
Yes, absolutely. So when you are breaking down your muscle, because this is what strength training does to you, you need something to repair that muscle. So that's where, all your extra protein will come very handy and will help your body and your muscle to recover and grow.
Linked to all this, let's come to the next issue, which a lot of protein has caused to a lot of people, which is gut issue, the gut health. With all the products available right now, we are in the era where every product for gut health is available, but still it is not adding up to solving a problem. what is going wrong in gut health?
Gut health is a very complex subject. So gut health is not just about probiotics. Let me just, probably, I'll break many hearts when I just say that just to just to keep popping probiotics is not the answer to have a healthy gut.
Let's understand that, because a lot of people face this gut problem today.
So gut is largely driven by, your gut health is largely driven by your emotional health management, your, how you manage your stress levels, because there's something called a gut-brain axis. If you're not able to process your emotions correctly, if you're not sleeping on time, if you are not eating a balanced meal, all that is going to impact your gut microbiome and eventually your gut health in a bigger way than probably not having that probiotic pill. So what is happening currently is that, everybody is just on an overdrive of having kombuchas and probiotic and, this and that, and they have just forgotten the basics. If they could just get the basics right, which is sleep hygiene, proper nutrition, stress management, also not being overstimulated all the time, because we are in that era that all of us, if we are not conscious about it, we are overstimulated through our phones. We are constantly looking at our phones, we are constantly reading mails, messages, we are on social media. So, there is an overstimulation some way, and overstimulation will always have a direct impact on your brain health, on your mental health. And that is where you see that a lot of people today, they are suffering and they're struggling with their gut health.
आपने अभी तक दोनों चीज़ों में ये समझाया, डायबिटीज़ में भी और गट हेल्थ में भी, कि स्लीप बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, इमोशनल हेल्थ बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. तो क्या ये चीज़ें, मतलब हम लोग गलत समझ रहे हैं कि आइसोलेशन में फिक्स करने की कोशिश करते हैं, हम कोई दवाई खा ली उसके लिए, कोई प्रोबायोटिक ले लिया, एंड वी फील कि आइसोलेशन में दे कैन बी फिक्स्ड. इट इज़ कम्प्लीटली रॉन्ग.
This is completely wrong, because see, your body is an integrated machine. Everything is interrelated. So your hormones are related. They're dependent on how you sleep, how you eat, how you process your stress, the food choices, lifestyle, everything around in your body will actually dictate that how your hormones will function, how your gut health will be, how your recovery would be, how you will age, how your immunity would be. So your body is a very complex integrated machine. It's a very integrated device. So you cannot treat one thing in isolation. And that is where functional nutrition and functional medicine has a role to play, because we look at you as one whole and not at just one, not just as one piece. So, for example, if you just try and treat a thyroid condition, so typically what happens is that the person is put on I'm talking about hypothyroidism here. You put on an altroxin support, a medicine. You are just given a thyroxine medicine, and this is how probably your hypothyroidism is managed. Let's say now, if we have to deal with somebody who has recently explored that, that I have hypothyroidism. So we approach this very differently. We, first of all, we just try and fix the nutrition, lifestyle, stress management, sleep regulation. So because when you regulate all these 4 aspects, and supplementation, not 4, in fact 5. So when you just learn to regulate these 5 things, you can actually see that not only can you reverse, you can also prevent a lot of, the big diseases which can happen to you
So these
eventually.
are pillar to overall health.
100%. These are the 5 pillars that on which your entire health rests.
So is it true that a lot of people, when they have stress, they have diarrhea? So is it linked? Because
100%. And I always say that a very classic example of this is that when you have a stage show, when you have to go and probably be at the stage, you feel butterflies in your stomach. So from where do those butterflies come? That's your brain. Probably your brain and your gut, they are in constant chatter with each other. So your gut will decide how you'll feel, how your mood would be, how bright you feel, how irritable you get, and vice versa. And your brain will probably dictate as to how the gut is supposed to feel. So they're like conjoined twins.
Let's talk about PCOD and the new name that is there now. Can you help us understand why the name changed?
So up till now, it was believed that polycystic ovaries is just a disease of the ovaries. But now it has been renamed, and probably it has been renamed to PMOD, which means that it is a metabolic disease. So this is where your whole body is actually involved, and your cystic ovaries is just a symptom of it. So that means that your metabolism is impaired. It's a metabolic condition. And it is not just a condition of, it's not a condition which is driven by ovaries. It's a condition which is driven by your metabolic health.
So metabolism triggers this problem.
100%. And largely sugar metabolism.
Is there an age bracket to this?
So generally we see that girls when they start menarche, when they start their periods is when they start also showing signs that periods get irregular, there's facial hair, there is sudden gain, weight gain. And, it continues till, we see a lot of patients right from the time when they're 13, 14 to maybe, when they're just planning to conceive or they're trying to build a family. So, I would say the range is right from 13 to, let's say, 35, 40.
And the numbers are overall scary. It's like near epidemic level right now.
100%. I think 1 in every 5 women, they have a PCOD or a
So
PMOD.
what's going wrong? Why is it happening?
Again, I'm just going to, talk about the same thing. I may just sound like, that, what do you say, a broken record that, you have to just focus on these 5 things. And these are easier said than done. I understand that, to change your lifestyle, to change your, food habits, to change your priorities as to what time you sleep, what is more important. Is it more important to catch that Netflix series, at night? Or is it more important that, you probably sleep on time and give your body a chance to recover and heal? So discipline, of course, yes, it plays a significant role, and it will always decide as to how you age and how your body will probably be, when later on in life, because while you're in 30s, everything is okay because your body is still able to, probably
30s, I still feel I am feeling right now.
Yeah.
Mid 30s, I feel 30s are bad. 20s, you can do anything. 20s
yeah. So
are
see,
fine.
the number is
20s,
coming
you
further
sway
down.
around with everything.
yeah. So 20s, I think you can get away with a lot of things. Maybe
Everything.
in 30s, you can get away with some of it. In 40s is when the body says, hey, now you better listen to me,
No,
or
I started
I'll
listening
probably,
to my body early
or
30s.
I'll start retaliating.
You gave me few slaps and I started learning.
Yeah.
But tell me something. So these 5 pillars that you mentioned, so it is triggering problems in males like diabetes and heart issues, and in females it is triggering issues like PCOD. So is it like that? These 5 pillars trigger these things during the teenage?
All the hormonal issues, they are driven by your lifestyle. You have to know that. Be it PCOD, be it thyroid,
Do guys also face hormonal issues?
guys also feel hormonal issues. Of course, it's more in women because their hormones are more probably more responsible in terms of women have a monthly cycle and all of that.
I think it's a matter of time we'll find a term for males also.
100%. 100%. They would be, and I'm sure that they also, while they're in their late 40s and all, there's something called an andropause, just like a menopause, where we know that men are also kind of,
Yeah, I've heard that. Is that true?
So andropause is not it's not a medical term, but of
But it's
course.
very interesting, and
Yeah.
guys find it embarrassing. So yeah.
Yeah. yeah. So wives often they jokingly say that, well, I think
Yeah, my husband is also
bad
having.
mood is just equated with andropause. He's going through andropause right now.
Yeah.
So of course, see, testosterone levels also decline, and testosterone, it is not just for your sexual health, but testosterone is also responsible for what kind of a mojo do you have on a day-to-day basis, right? So when you wake up and you say that, well, I can just take on the world. So that is just your testosterone telling you to be to be thinking on that way. But when your testosterone levels, when they dip, then you know that your energy, your go for life, you'll be more irritable. Your recovery in the gym will be not that good. You'll not be able to lift heavy because your levels are declining. So definitely, andropause is a real thing.
Andropause, we have to be careful of that. Tell me something now. Tell me about a food or an eating pattern which is silently destroying health and which is also normalized now. So what is it that is right in front of us and we all feel normal, but it is destroying our health?
So processed food, eating out of plastic bags.
What happens of eating out of plastic bags?
So
Let's
the
get
BPA,
into that detail because
and you also see that a lot of families, they have this practice of warming and heating their food in plastic bowls. That is, I think, that is the most dangerous thing.
I'm unlearning that right now. My wife keeps on.
she keeps telling you that.
Yeah.
So that's the most, I would say, detrimental thing that you can do to your health. The BPA in that plastic can actually, it can impact your insulin receptors and
do we get plastic particles while we eat?
100%.
Oh my
So
God.
your food leaches onto that plastic, and it becomes a part of how you eat, what you eat. And then what it does is that it starts leading to, impact on your insulin. And that is what in turn results into your insulin resistance and so on and so forth. So plastic is something, and also processed foods, because they will have n number of preservatives, n number of, emulsifiers, chemicals, which you don't even know. And it just doesn't mean that it is just the packaged food that I'm talking about here. Even the food in restaurants and hotels, you have to understand that, like, just to make it tastier, to make it, like, more flavorful, for it to have a shelf life, there will be some preservative or the other which is added, which you and I may not know. And so while I'm not saying that, do not eat anything and just start living like a saint, what I mean to hear is that moderation is the key. So you should know that, while eating out or ordering in once in a week is okay, but if I'm doing that on a on a daily basis, then of course it's going to harm, and a lot of people do that.
Give me some advice, because we are living in the era of ultra processed foods and also now the era of food vloggers. So we now see a lot of people talking about this is the best tiramisu in the world, this is the best this and that. So we see a lot of opportunities in front of us. What do you advise today's millennials? How do they take control of their tongue, or how important it is? Because it is so tempting right now. Everything is right in front of you and everything looks yummy.
So see, now I'll give you some very practical examples here. If you just load yourself on a lot of protein in the first half of the day, which is like, till 12 noon. So if you just have, a lot of protein, a lot of fiber, you will see that your cravings will not be there. Your cravings will not be as strong. So when we succumb to our cravings is also when we are either underfit or we are like stressed. So, I give a very, I have a term for this, which is HALT, HALT. So whenever there's a craving that strikes you, you have to first of all stop and ask yourself that, am I hungry? Am I angry? HA, am I lonely? Or am I tired? So these are the 4 reasons that why we usually succumb to our temptations.
So for the binge eating, help us understand your HALT term. Help us understand again.
Whenever we have a craving, okay, this is dictated by 4 things, right? Hunger, anger, loneliness, and tiredness. So you'll only decide to eat something either you're hungry or you're angry or you're lonely or you're tired.
So that's all behind binge eating.
Yeah.
Binge eating.
That's binge eating. And when you have when you have a craving that, okay, aaj main wo pizza khata hu, right? So it will be dictated by one of these 4 things.
I think this is what should be added in Zomato's revenue and balance sheet. HALT.
Yeah, I know, maybe. So angry also.
Because this is where the most orders happen, after 9 p.m.
Yes, exactly. I think a lot of people, they order in late, and
while
that's
because sleep issues are linked to some of the HALT things. Either you're feeling lonely or you're angry or something.
Or tired.
Yeah, tired.
Just tired. You just want to unwind.
So you want to stuff in and sleep. Maybe it is like that.
This is very, very harmful. I think when you just eat and sleep on a full tummy.
People want to stuff and sleep because the stomach gets to work and the mind gets slow. A lot of people use this pattern to sleep. Is it okay?
Yes, they just want to, they lull themselves into sleep.
They want to shut their mind down.
Yeah, so वो बोलते हैं ना कि आप अपने आप को फूड से इंटॉक्सिकेट कर रहे हो. So आप इतने हद तक खा लेती हो कि आप इंटॉक्सिकेट होके आपको नींद आ जाए.
What happens, like you said, सोने से just पहले खाना is harmful. Why?
It is very, very harmful because you're not even giving your body a chance to digest the food. And you're sleeping on a full stomach. It will lead to low stomach acid in the morning, and you will experience bloating and, constipation, and, you'll not feel fresh in the morning. So when you wake up in the morning and if you're not hungry, you know that this is a sign of bad health. So waking up, with hunger, and anybody who's eating till 12 at night will not be hungry in the morning, right? And I work with a lot of, patients in my clinic, where in my practice, where they come and they say कि सुबह तो भूख नहीं लगती है, तो आप 12 बजे के बाद ही कुछ दी, तो 12 बजे तक तो मैं इंटरमिटेंट फास्टिंग कर सकता हूँ. That is because आप 2 बजे तक खा रहे थे. So वो तो इंटरमिटेंट फास्टिंग नहीं हुई. I would rather say that, eat your, and I'm not saying that there should be no evening or no late night like that when you do not eat at all. So you can just do that once in a month, twice a month. That is acceptable.
What
because
is the last time that you suggest to eat in the evening?
So 2 hours before your bedtime. And like I say that a decent bedtime for a modern urban Indian should be 10:30. So I'm not asking you to sleep by 9:30.
So by 8:30 you should be done with dinner.
100%. By 8:30 you should be done with your dinner, followed by a 10 minutes walk, which will also help you metabolize your food really well and will lead to any kind of insulin spikes. Will avoid any kind of insulin spikes.
I have some true or false questions for you. Just a quick true and false, and maybe you can give some heading to that. Eating fat makes you fat?
Not true entirely. Eating carbohydrates make you fat.
You need a detox cleanse to reset your body?
Detox cleanses are important but only when done under medical supervision.
Medical supervision is important. If your blood work is normal, you're healthy.
Not at all.
Supplements can replace bad diet.
This is the biggest myth because right now there's so much of flooding in the market when it comes to supplements. I think there's a supplement for everything under the sun. I mean, like I said, that a bad lifestyle and bad food choices, nothing in this world can fix. You have to. I mean, this is a non-negotiable. You have to fix your diet and you have to fix your lifestyle if you want to really live healthy.
So those
amount of
5 pillars are important.
100%. No amount of supplementation is going to help.
Tell me about this magic pill now, which is GLP-1 or Ozempic. It's booming in India right now. Can you talk about it? Because a lot of people are losing weight, whether it's especially celebrities. What do you think about it? How is it?
It is not just the celebrities those who are losing weight on GLP-1. You have to see that the sale of GLP-1, I mean, it has been astronomical, especially in a country like India. Of course, we are the diabetic capital of the world. So, there is a reason. And while I'm not against it, I mean, if there's a medical need, please use it. But if you are just if you're just looking at this as a magic bullet, like you said, to lose weight, this is a recipe for disaster.
Is it? Explain me both. When is it good and why is it disaster?
So GLP-1 is not for cosmetic weight loss. This is something that I have said this, I think, 1,000,000 times because a lot of people come to our clinic and they say that
people are just
please put me on GLP-1 because I'm not able to lose weight. So GLP-1 is not a substitute to laziness, right? Where you don't want to put in and people think that if I'll be on GLP-1, I don't have to put in the hard work. Let me just tell you that while you're on GLP-1, you still have to put in the hard work because you still need to be on a clean diet, you still need to exercise, you still need to do your strength training. However, what it does is that if you have a real issue with your insulin or your your HbA1c or your sugar levels and you've not been able to lose weight in spite of your best efforts, this is when you actually need help in GLP-1 and that is when it's going to work for you. But you say that, well, I don't want to go to the gym, I don't want to eat clean, but put me on GLP-1 and I will lose weight. So this is when it is a recipe for disaster. The other thing is that it is only meant for people whose BMI is 27 plus. A lot of people globally, if you see, the trend is people on lower BMIs also, they're also using it and it is now used by women, those who are menopausal and I mean, it has a role to play when it comes to your insulin management because your insulin resistance also sometimes develops while you are, while you're menopausing and premenopausing. So it should be used with caution. It should be used only under proper medical supervision. However, if you've decided to use GLP-1, you have to understand that muscle loss is a serious side effect. And to build 1 kg of muscle takes you, a lot of effort, a lot of time. And it is very easy to lose muscle on GLP-1. So let's say if you lose 30 kgs of weight and if you lose 10 kgs of muscle out of those 30 kgs, you have to understand that you compromised your health on a long-term basis. And there is no end date to GLP-1 until and unless there's a program when you start the GLP-1.
There's no end date to it.
So I will tell you why. Because when you start the GLP-1 journey, when you work with a plan and you say that, well, these many months, I'm just going to just probably increase the dose. So there's you have to taper the dose down. So you start with, let's say 2.5 mg and you go up to 15 mg and then you also have to bring it down to 2.5 mg just in case if you want to be on a plan where you have to wean it off. But a lot of people, I see that those who've been on, those who just started randomly injecting themselves, they do not know how to wean themselves off and now they're struggling. Because they are losing muscle, they are scared that if I stop my GLP-1, I will gain all the weight back. And, how am I going to manage that part? So that way, GLP-1 is a double-edged sword.
Tell me more about, पहले तो, as a layman, होता क्या है GLP-1, करता क्या है और क्या costing है, pricing क्या है?
So GLP-1 is basically, it works on your GLP-1 and GIP, these are two separate hormones. GLP-1 is, of course, it works on your hunger hormone. So it suppresses your hunger and it also delays your gastric emptying. So what it means is that your food will get digested very slowly. So because your food will be digested slowly, you'll always feel full. So it gives you a feeling of fullness. And there's another hormone called GIP. So your triazepatide makes two hormones, which is GLP-1 and GIP, which is your hunger hormone and satiety hormone. There's also another variant of GLP-1, which is your Ozempic and Wegovy. So that works only on your hunger hormone. That is a classical GLP-1. And again, it will keep you fuller for longer, and your gastric emptying will be delayed because your satiety level goes up and your hunger comes down. You are able to lose weight. So if you were eating, let's say, 2000 calories before you started the GLP-1 journey, you'll be able to eat only 1000, and then you'll also feel full. So there's no question of your willpower being tested, which is what happens when you go on a conventional calorie restriction diet. So of course it's easy to lose weight, but like I said, that you have to be muscle loss is a serious side effect, and when you start your GLP-1 journey, you have to have a solid plan to preserve your muscle mass, because if you're not doing that, then you are just playing with your health.
So what is the cost per dosage?
I mean, right now,
If you can give me a bracket of
yeah, so Wegovy or Ozempic, they are priced at about, I think, 5 to 6,000 rupees a month kind of a cost, which
how
is not a
frequently
lot.
do people take it?
It is a weekly dose,
So 4 times a month,
4 times a month. So this is
20,000
about
roughly, 20 to 25.
no. So this is for the month. This is the monthly cost.
Monthly
of
cost is 5 to
Wegovy.
6,000.
Yeah, I'm talking about Ozempic, which is your semaglutide, and the other drug is your Mounjaro. This is slightly more expensive because tirzepatide, I mean the previous one, your Wegovy and your semaglutide, the patents they got lifted only this year, and that's why the prices have crashed. So now you can just, I think it is available to, I mean in India it's available at 5 to 6,000 rupees a month kind of a cost. But your tirzepatide is more expensive. It starts from 14,000 and goes up to 28,000 a month.
That's expensive. Tell me about the microbiome testing, because we are talking about the gut and we're talking about the overall health. Is microbiome testing real? Is it helpful? What are the benefits of it?
So microbiome testing is completely relevant because it will actually, it will give you a status as to how your gut microbiome is as of now. Having said that, you also have to realize that your microbiome is not like, it keeps changing and everything has a role to play. Even when you travel when you go on a holiday, you'll come back with your microbiome changed.
I always face a problem during my travel.
Yeah, so your microbiome changes and it is dependent on a lot of factors. It is multifactorial.
Top
It is-
2-3 factors?
Of course, your food. Again, I'm just going to talk about the same thing. Your stress levels, your sleep, your, change of environment.
Because all of those changes happen when you travel.
Stimulation, mental stimulation. So all that actually has a role to play. While microbiome testing is now getting more and more sophisticated, and it can actually give you a lot of knowledge as to how your microbiome is, and specific microbiomes are responsible for specific aspects of health. So a particular strain would be responsible for your weight management. The other one would be responsible for your, mental wellness. The third one could be responsible as to how your sugar gets metabolized in the body, and so on and so forth. So now with microbiome testing, you can also do customized probiotic supplementation. However, like I said, that is again not a magic bullet. It is not, it is in combination with your clean lifestyle and food, only then it's going to work. If you think that I'll not change anything about my lifestyle and my food and, the bad eating and the bad food choices, but I will have this probiotic, let me tell you that is not going to work.
So tell me about these microbiome. They are good and bad both, right?
There's good microbiome and bad gut microbiome. So when there's an imbalance, which means your bad microbiome, it outweighs or becomes more because of the reasons that we discussed, of course, it leads to dysbiosis. So the good microbiome comes down and the bad gut bacteria
And what
goes
are the
up.
consequences?
The consequences, the apparent thing is like, you'll feel, low on energy, you'll probably have bloating, you'll have indigestion,
Is it also linked to weight gain?
100%. And that can lead to weight gain also.
So is it like your cravings are also linked to bad microbiome?
Cravings are definitely linked to your microbiome composition. And when
Imbalance causes this problem?
Yes, the dysbiosis will lead to cravings.
Tell me about one big mistake. I'll ask this personal question to you. You personally made on your own health or nutrition before you realized that this was wrong, or this was something that the society understood wrong. What was that?
Something that I was practicing myself.
Something you personally realized later in your journey that was wrong for your body, and you changed it, you fixed it. What was that?
I think there was a point in time that when I was experimenting with a lot of supplements, and that is also like, I sometimes also treat my body as a lab. So
You have to, because you are in the subject.
yeah, so
You're the scientist here.
yeah, so then then I would actually pop a lot of supplements, get a lot of supplements from somebody traveling to the US, say get me this one, get me that one, and then I realized that it's not helping me much because I started getting a lot of bloating in spite of doing a lot of things correct, largely everything correct, work out regularly, eat clean, sleep on time, but still there's a feeling of heaviness in the stomach and your weight shifting in a way that you don't want. And then one day I just I just got up, I just spoke to myself and I consulted with my own self and I said that if somebody had come to me who was in a similar situation, then what would I do? So I just stopped random supplementation. I said I'm not going to supplement, and probably I started eliminating. So there's a process of elimination. And then I finally arrived at a prescription for myself, which is like now very, very basic, which means a very good magnesium and a very good, multivitamin
Tell us
and
about your
omega-3.
supplements. What do you take and how frequently do you take that? Because that can help a lot of people because a lot of people take it randomly. Help us with your routine.
So magnesium is a non-negotiable for me.
Every day?
Every day, every night.
One tablet?
Yeah. So I have a combination of magnesium and vitamin D3 because...
Every day?
Every day. Because, a woman over 40, you need to actually be looking into your calcium reserves. And your magnesium and D3, both the supplements, they help in calcium absorption. And calcium is very important, at any age, and more so when you are a 40 plus woman. So magnesium I have, then I also have, a supplement, a multivitamin, a multimineral kind of a supplement, because sometimes, if you're not probably if you're not very careful with your diet, and all of us, because of XYZ, the modern stresses, there would be some kind of, a compromise. So at least when you have a good quality, high quality, multi-mineral, multi-vitamin supplement, then you know that a lot of things get covered in that. We will never be able to supplement your things like chromium, boron, manganese. So all these copper, so all these micro minerals are also equally important. So a good quality supplement
So
will
copper,
always help
zinc and
you.
all you take in one tablet or separate tablets
No,
for
this
each?
is just one tablet. So like I said, it's a multivitamin, and you can just... Now the third thing, which is I think my most favorite supplement of all, and which I can't emphasize enough, is omega-3. All of us should have omega-3 as a supplement.
Both
Vegetarians,
boys and girls?
100%, all of us, because that will keep the inflammation down in the body. And you have to understand that the single cause for aging is inflammation. And when there's inflammation in the body is when you start aging, is when you have poor recovery, is when you have bad cholesterol. So this is very integral. Omega-3 all of us should have, but an omega-3 which has high EPA and DHA. So that is important, and that's why supplementation should not be random. It should always be prescribed by somebody who understands these supplements and what needs to be given and what will work for you.
A lot of details behind it. My last question to you is, because we millennials are, all of us are a bit worried about our mothers, and our mothers are also watching YouTube now. So most of them, the millennial mothers are either in menopause or entering menopause. What do you suggest them as per functional diet? 2-3 tips for them that they can look into.
So before I talk about the diet, the most important thing over here is that strength training is a non-negotiable.
Tell me that, because most of the females think it is just for males.
No. So strength training, and a lot of women, they have this misunderstanding that if I start doing strength training, I'll probably grow muscle like a man.
And I'll have the testosterone increases.
Yeah, so it's a testosterone increase, and let me
but
tell you that women
there is
also
a
have
misconception
testosterone.
around that.
And in fact, you have to understand that when a woman is actually transitioning into menopause, the testosterone levels also come down for her. So women also need testosterone as much as men do. And it is not just your estrogen, it is your progesterone, estrogen and testosterone, which probably, they get out of sync. So you have to strength train, of course, you have to also keep your, your mojo in life, and your testosterone has a role to play over there. But also it will improve your blood sugar response in the body. So the more muscle you have, and you'll know that, your muscle is the only single organ which will keep you young. So I cannot emphasize the importance of muscle mass in the body, because that will keep you young, that will keep you injury free, that will keep your bone density high.
So that means increasing protein consumption?
Yeah. So first you have to, of course, strength training
and
at least 3 times a week. I'm not saying that you have to hit the gym 5 times a week, and I'm not even saying that you have to lift 100 kgs. What I'm going to say is that anything which is a resistance training, where you have to where you are lifting something, and it could be, you can just start with even 3 kgs to 3 kgs,
So first
whatever
one
your
is
body
strength training,
accepts.
second
Strength
protein.
training, protein intake is very
Which
important.
form of protein do you suggest at that age? Like top top recommendation?
So of course, if I mean it depends as to what the
Vegetarian
eating
or
habit is like.
non-vegetarian. Yeah,
Let's say a vegetarian. Not typical. I'm discussing a vegetarian diet here because that is more difficult to address. So basically, you can improve your calcium intake and protein intake through curd. Curd is very important. You can have curd twice a day. It'll give you good amount of protein. If you have eggs, eggs is the cheapest superfood that is available, in the market. One egg white is about 6 grams of protein. So, you can eat, if you just have 12 grams of protein in the morning, you'll be sorted. There's also something called nutritional yeast that can also be included. That's also, you can just use it just like cheese. You can just sprinkle it over your salad, over your, whatever you're having, you can just use it on top of that. Then I said, sprouted dals is a very good example. You can do that. However, though paneer is a very good source of protein, but it is also very high on fat. So, paneer, I would still say that you can just
So tofu is better?
exercise. Tofu is okay, but of course, tofu is also estrogenic in nature. So, you can, for a menopausal woman, it may work, but you should not go on an overdrive of soya or, soy milk and all. You can just have maybe once or twice a week. So, you can make soy a part of your diet, but not an everyday thing.
So top 2 things for a woman entering menopause is strength training and protein.
And protein, sleep and rest, and a supportive family who can just probably, just understand that if she's having a meltdown or because, mood swings are very common.
So third one is supportive husband.
Supportive husband.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all the lovely advice and the details of technicalities. I think it really helps getting clarity of all the confusion on the internet. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.